Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yes!
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show.
You're a great American.
Now, Ross Kaminsky.
Come on, man.
On Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
All right, here we are. Happy Monday. Thanks so much for spending a little time with me. I appreciate it. Thanks for starting your day and your week with me. I hope you had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. One quick thing, very quick thing before we get into my major topic for this segment of anti-Semitism. I wanted to tell you about one kind of fun thing I did this weekend. And I went to a friend's house, and he's got a CNC machine. And I don't mean one of these little hobbyist machines. This thing is 6 feet tall and 9 or 10 feet wide. And this guy he's an engineer, and I mean, basically that machine is his business, or a big part of his business. It's not all of his business, but so you may recall a few weeks ago when Joe Biden announced that he wanted to get some regulations changed around gun laws, including making it a lot more difficult and expensive to buy partially completed gun parts, which you then finish the rest of yourself, that you could then put together into a gun that, you know, Biden and others call them ghost guns. You almost never hear about a so-called ghost gun being involved in a crime. You know why? Because they're quite difficult to make. And you gotta, takes time and it takes some skill, and it's just not something that your ordinary gangbanger is going to have the time or the expertise to do. But anyway, since Biden was going to make it more expensive, my friend and I, we bought some parts, and I went over to his place on Saturday, and we used his CNC machine to kind of mill out some AR-15 lowers and, you know, get the holes in there that the trigger pins go through, and the hole at the bottom that the trigger goes through. It was just so cool watching this machine, and the liquid coolant that gets shot onto the... It looks like a drill bit. It's technically something else called an in-mill, I guess. But it was really, really cool. And I love that I'm doing something that would annoy Joe Biden if he saw it. Why are you showing me that weird tripod thing?
Because this grip pod is where that technology came from. CNC machines that would squirt coolant onto the drill bits.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a cool little thing. I like it. Okay, so I hope you had a fun weekend like that and did something fun. I'm going to take my time to build the whole guns because I got other things I got to do first. But anyway, looking forward to it. So as I looked around throughout so-called mainstream media yesterday, and one of the easiest ways to do it is to just go to Google News, and then, you know, if there's a particular story you're looking at, usually there'd be a story or two about it, and then below them there'd be a link to click on that says see all coverage. And you click on that, and it'll open a page that just has the news stories about that story. And now, so I haven't done it this morning, but I did this yesterday. And the only large media outlet that I could find with any covering of this story at all was Fox News. It wasn't on Washington Post, New York Times, LA Times, NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN. I didn't see it on any of those places. Here's the Fox News headline. New York Police Department investigates more anti-Semitic attacks after Jewish teens are beaten and synagogue worshipers are harassed. And over at dailycaller.com, a conservative media site, but, you know, small, and again, conservative, headline there. 2 Jewish boys beaten after refusing to repeat anti-Jewish statements, police say, before rescue by anonymous driver. At least there's that good story there. Keep in mind again that this story, as far as I can tell, was not picked up by any major media outlet other than Fox. Let me go to the Daily Caller. 2 Jewish teens were allegedly rescued by a ride-share driver after being beaten in Brooklyn on Saturday by pro-Palestinian individuals. The NYPD received a report Saturday night that a 17 and 18-year-old were walking near Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn, I think that's where my mom grew up, when they were approached by 2 unidentified males who demanded that the victims repeat anti-Jewish statements. So both of these teenagers were wearing yarmulkes. They were walking down the street. The father of the 18-year-old said that his son and his nephew were told to chant "Free Palestine," but they refused to do so. They were punched in the head. The younger one was placed in a chokehold. They tried to run away. They were being chased by one of these Palestinians or pro-Palestinian people who had a baseball bat. And I guess like an Uber driver, like pulled up and got these kids in the car and drove them away. Former Democratic New York State Assemblyman Dov Hikind said, this is just a horror story how they were accosted. It's unbelievable. And the amazing thing, this is the Sabbath, so these are Orthodox kids. Since it was Sabbath, they wouldn't have a telephone with them. Like, even if, I don't know if they have a telephone other days, but they certainly wouldn't, Orthodox people would not have a telephone with them on a Saturday, right? So they didn't have a telephone. Somebody saw this going on, actually picked up the kids. And for people that Orthodox to get into a car on Sabbath is also, you know, as this guy put it, unheard of. Now, this is just a small thing about Jewish law. You are allowed to break any holiday rule. Like, for example, on Yom Kippur, you don't eat for 24 hours. You don't eat, drink. You don't do really anything except pray if you're doing it right for 24 hours. But you are allowed to eat or to drink to save a life. We've talked about this before, actually, how if you have a drink with a Jew, the Jew will often toast l'chaim, to life, because in Judaism, life is the most important thing. So you are allowed to break almost any rule of Jewish law of how a holiday is to be obeyed if it is to save a life. So a truly Orthodox Jew would not use any kind of technology, would not get in a car, right, would not do much of anything from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. So for these kids to get in a car, it would have been because it would have saved their lives. I'll give you one example. This is going to sound a little bad, but I'm going to tell you anyway. There's a term, again, among the very religious, the Shabbos Goy. So Goy is somebody who's not Jewish. Shabbos is Hebrew for Sabbath. So the truly Orthodox, they really don't want to do anything that involves, you know, using tools and using technology and using anything from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. So if they need to do something like turn on or off a light switch, oftentimes they would have a friend who's not Jewish who they could ask to come turn the light on or off for them. That's the Shabbos Goy. I love that concept. I'm not Orthodox. I'm not a particularly religious person. But anyway, so back to my main point. My main point here. These two kids were attacked by pro-Palestinian anti-Semites. Now, can you imagine if the story were the other way and if some Jewish people assaulted some Palestinian people, you know, on the streets of Dearborn, Michigan? Don't you think every single major media outlet would have it? I think so. Also in Brooklyn, a bunch of Orthodox Jews were in front of their synagogue, and some people, some men, started yelling at them, "Free Palestine, kill all the Jews." And nobody is picking this up. The mainstream media outlets are not picking this up. NYPD Hate Crimes tweeted out a bunch of pictures of Palestinian-looking men. I guess they know his name because they know that he's 29 years old, attacking someone, assaulting someone. This guy attacked a Jewish person, called him a dirty Jew, and said, F Israel, Hamas is going to kill all of you. And yet, again, I bet you haven't seen this anywhere in the news, with the possible exception of Fox, unless you look at some of these smaller conservative media outlets. I want to take a few minutes here and share with you part of a video. And if you're watching us online, with a little luck due to the wizardry of producer Shannon, this is on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and type in Ross Kaminsky, you'll find my channel, and with a little luck, this should work. A guy named Rabbi Sachs did a very interesting video about 2 years ago on the connection between anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, which means opposition to Israel, and about Judaism and Israel. And I want to share a little bit of this with you.
How can anti-Zionism be the new anti-Semitism? Surely there's no connection between them. Anti-Semitism is hatred of Jews as a people, a race, an ethnic group. Anti-Zionism is an objection to a country,
I actually
a nation,
have
a state. What's the connection between them? Anti-Semitism is a virus that mutates, so that new anti-Semites can deny that they're anti-Semites at all, because their hate is different from the old. In the Middle Ages, Jews were hated for their religion. In the 19th and early 20th century, they were hated for their race. Today, they are hated for their nation-state, Israel. What all three have in common is that there are different ways of saying that Jews have no right to exist collectively as Jews with the same rights as other human beings. In each era, anti-Semitism has focused on the primary form of collective Jewish existence. In the Middle Ages, there were a religious community, so they were hated for their religion. In the 19th century, when many European Jews became secular, they formed an ethnic group, a race, and were hated as such. Today, when their primary collective embodiment is as the people of Israel in the state of Israel, they are hated for their state. Anti-Zionism is the latest mutation of the world's longest hate. What then is the connection between Jews as a people, Judaism as a religion, and Israel as a state? The connection between the Jewish people and Israel goes back long before the birth of either Islam or Christianity. Jews created a society there in the days of Joshua, a kingdom in the days of Saul, and a nation with Jerusalem as its capital in the days of King David. All of this more than 3,000 years ago. Jews are the only people who ever created a nation-state there. At all other times in the past 3,000 years, it was merely an administrative district in an empire whose center was elsewhere. The Assyrian, Babylonian, Persian, Alexandrian, Roman, and Byzantine empires, the Crusaders of the Holy Roman Empire, the various Muslim empires, such as the Umayyads, the Abbasids, the Fatimids, the Mamluks, and the Ottomans, until finally the British. Jews are the only people who have maintained a continuous presence in the land. They are its indigenous, original inhabitants. The November 1947 United Nations vote to bring Israel into existence was a momentous reversal of imperialism. It gave back to the Jewish people the home taken from them by empire after empire. Israel was the only non-artificial creation in the Middle East after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. The rest, among them Jordan, Syria, Iraq, Libya, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen, were all artificial creations that hadn't been states before, which is why most of them still exist in a condition of ethnic, religious, and tribal strife. Only Israel had previously existed as a nation-state. That's the unbreakable connection between Israel and the Jewish people. The connection between Israel and Judaism is equally ancient and fundamental. It's more than just, as Robert Frost said, home is the place where when you have to go there, they have to take you in. Read the Hebrew Bible, and you'll see immediately that it isn't about the salvation of the soul. It's about creating in the Holy Land a society based on biblical ideas of justice, welfare, the sanctity of life, and caring for the stranger because you know what it feels like to be a stranger. Judaism began with two journeys to the land, one by Abraham and Sarah, the other by the Israelites in the days of Moses. At least half of the 613 commandments of the Bible are only applicable to the land of Israel. And though in the centuries of exile and dispersion, Jews lived in almost every land under the sun, Israel has remained a focus of their prayers and the only place where they've been able to do what every other nation takes for granted, construct their own society in the light of their own ideals. Judaism differs from the other Abrahamic monotheisms, Christianity and Islam, in that it's the only one of the three that never created or sought to create an empire. It was the imperialism of the Roman Emperor Hadrian that led him in the 2nd century to change the country's name to Palestine. One of the first, but certainly not the last, deliberate falsifications of history by those who seek to deny the Jewish people's right to their land. There are 56 Islamic nations and 159 in which Christians form the majority. There is, and only ever has been, one Jewish state, tiny and vulnerable though it is and always was. That's why anti-Zionism, denying Jews the right to their one and only collective home by misrepresenting Judaism, is the new anti-Semitism, every bit as virulent and dangerous as the old.
Wow. I hope you found that as powerful and moving as I did first time I saw it and heard it. It's actually up on the blog if you go to rosskaminsky.com and check out the new post. Ross tells it straight about Israel and its, quote, liberal American opponents. That blog, that video is in there, so you can easily find it, watch it again, share it with friends, and I hope that you do. It is... I was going to say it's shocking. It's not shocking that there's anti-Semitism, even in the United States of America. It's shocking how the mainstream media refuses to cover it, where if it were any other group being assaulted, right, if it were Asian Americans, like we hear about every single attack on an Asian American, right, if it were any other group being attacked, or if it were Jews doing the attacking, it would be the lead story on every mainstream media station all the time. All the time. And I want to make sure you are aware of this. I want to make sure everybody understands that the mainstream media is essentially an arm of the Democratic Party and that there is an important tie between this ongoing tacit acceptance of anti-Semitism in America, despite the spineless words of Chuck Schumer and people like that. There is an ongoing tacit acceptance of anti-Semitism due to a collaboration between the mainstream media and the Democratic Party. And I repeat my view that no American Jew should ever vote for a Democrat. All right, when we come back, I don't do a lot of sort of nuts and bolts partisan political stuff, especially when we're not that close to an election. But over at National Review, Charlie Cook asks an important question that I think is already relevant. Does the Democratic Party have a Kamala Harris problem? I sure hope so.
This is Denver's Talk Station with Ross Kaminsky now. Dan Kaplis today at 4, 630 KHOW, Denver.